אנחנו נציג את המרצה הראשון שלנו, שהגיע אלינו במיוחד, הרחק מכאן. אני רוצה להציג את דוקטור עמית צ'האודרי, שמתארח בישראל במיוחד לרגל הוועידה. הוא מנהל בכיר בארגון הבינלאומי HSI, humane society international, הפועל לשיפור רווחת בעלי החיים ברחבי העולם וצמצום תופעת הכלבים המשוטטים. דוקטור צ'האודרי הוא וטרינר, מנהל מחלקת הערכה ומעקב, חיות מחמד ושיתוף הציבור לפרויקטים בכל רחבי העולם, שעורכים מחקרים בהיקף נרחב על אוכלוסיות של כלבים וחתולים, גישותיהם של אנשים כלפי רווחת בעלי החיים והרגליהם של בעלי חיות מחמד. מחקר מסוג זה מסייע לפתח יוזמות מבוססות מידע ועובדות לסירוס ועיקור כלבים וחתולים, מניעת התפשטות של מחלת הכלבת וטיפול וטרינרי במחירים נגישים בקהילות חלשות מבחינה סוציו-אקונומית. דוקטור צ'האודרי והצוות שלו הגיעו לארץ גם בשנת 2017, אז ביצעו סקר להערכת מספר הכלבים המשוטטים בארץ בשיתוף של תנו לחיות לחיות, אז ספרנו 32,800 כלבים משוטטים. Please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amit, and as Yael introduced me, I'm a veterinarian working with Humane Society International for about 15 years by now. In Humane Society International, work for all animals around the world, and we have about 10 country offices and program in about 23 countries. The parent organization is Humane Society United States, which works in United States, but outside United States, the work done through Humane Society International. Now the topic we're discussing is about dog. To understand how the dog domestication happened with human, if we track it back, it seems like that the relationship between human and dog evolved quite a long time ago. And the reason was that people provided food sources and shelter to dogs in a replacement of various other benefits, which slowly evolved to a level where dogs are now part of family member. They live inside house. But that's not always true. Dogs live on the street, abandonment, various other issues. But how and why dog exist, and how they exist with people, if we maybe think about that, it's all about human need, that we created this. If I am owning a dog, if I decide to own a dog, that's my choice. It's not dog choice that dog wanted to be with me. And if I decide to keep the dog as a family member, that's my choice. But if I decide to keep the dog on the street, that's again my choice. If I'm abandoning dog on the street or letting it roam freely, that's again my choice. So actually I am the problem, not the dog. But we always talk about dog. We always talk about cat. We always talk about free-roaming dogs, which are biting, barking, predating. But tracking back, it seems like I am the problem. Who wants dog, who doesn't want dogs, who keep dogs, who is responsible sometime, irresponsible sometime. So my actions determine the population on the street or in the open areas. My action determines how they will behave or react. And today, it might not be enough to discuss everything, but to understand what other countries are doing around dog, and maybe a snapshot of cat as well, and how that program or they work with dog might help us to understand that what are the global situation, and of course the issues, or if we call it problem, or if we call it situation, exist everywhere. It's nothing unique about Israel. That's what I'm hearing. It's very unique about Israel. This is our toughest problem. There's a problem everywhere exists. How we take action, how we decide to take action will determine the future. And there is no time to start it. There is no right time or wrong time to stop it. It's when we decide. So this relationship could be anywhere, in any form. And dog doesn't require your financial status, Mercedes car or something. It can be with anyone, anywhere, exist in various situations. And again, it's human who most of the time creates situation, problem, and issues are even complex in other countries where dogs are raised for meat consumption, dogs are raised for various other purposes. But they still exist with human. So human and dogs are the connection. How they kept, how they raised, whether for meat consumption, whether for selling, without any determination of whether it's a so small, low income, high income. But if this is the complex issue, Alliance for International Companion Animal Management produce some approaches which can be learned, that no single intervention or no single program can solve this, because it's come with the various aspect of it. So when it's come with the various aspect, it has to be comprehensive, it has to be holistic approach, which involve legal enforcement, task force, advocacy, community engagement, working with education system, and we'll talk about some of this component today. But when we think of dog, it could be owned, it could be street dog, it could be feral dog. And the feral dog, when we say feral or wild dog, I think that's where we are getting lost in context. The moment there is a food provision through human settlement, there is a human involvement in that. Whether it's just garbage, whether it's just slaughterhouse providing leftover, but there is a provision through human. So humans are providing food, then there is a connection. But the terminology goes on and on, with this community dog, with free roaming dog. So in nutshell, if we say free roaming dog, that means any dog which is on the street without a direct human control is free roaming. It could be owned, temporarily allowed to roam on the street. It could be abandoned pet. It could be of those which living on the street and producing their offspring. It could be anything. But ultimately, tracking back, it goes back to the human, how humans started this relationship with dog and how they're contributing to largely on this population. So one of the intervention we talk about is spay-neuter. And why we do spay-neuter? One is population control, that we want to control the population. Health benefit to the individual dog through spay-neuter. And some sort of behavior modification. So these are the main component or argued when we do spay-neuter. And within this, when we specifically talk about population control, if we try to separate it, it could be two, owned dog population and street dog. Street dog definition came specifically from India, but it could be free roaming dog. So how intervention applied to specific category of dog and how those result into a benefit we claim. But so far, it's very evident that we don't have a very strong national scale or the continental scale program which proves that you can solve this issue by spay-neuter. In theory, it works, that you stop a breeding of a population of a mammal, and if there is no breeding, there has to be no population existing because you're stopping that. But is it only breeding that contributes to dog population? Is it that just breeding is playing the role? Then what about abandonment? What about other parameters playing the role? So it's more than that. It's not just controlling breeding, but it has to be done with various manner. The slide we saw about ICAM, that is why it discusses about human education, legislation, law enforcement, responsible pet ownership, adoption, sheltering. It talks about various components because the situation or the issue is larger than just controlling breeding. But the breeding play a larger role in all of this context. So why dog exist on the street? Because they are provided food through human, whether there's a deliberate feeding, whether it's leftover, whether it's a garbage, whether it's unintentional feeding, but there is a food source provided to dog through humans or human settlement or the people. And if that is the case, breeding is one component of that. So we take several examples, but the first example is from India. That in India, about 150 years, the only intervention to control dog population or to control rabies was killing. So killing was the main approach, which lasted until 2000, until there was a specific law from the central government of India, which prohibit killing, which prohibit relocation, and only allow intervention is spay, neuter, vaccinate, return the dog from where they caught. This is the law in India today, which got again modified in 2023, and it's become Animal Birth Control Law 2023. But we can argue that in India's situation is different, and in Israel's situation is different. But that's the case everywhere around the world. There is no situation which is not comparable. Everyone has their own issues around dogs and cats, and that is how it is so far. So definition of street dog came through this law, and in India there are about 62 million dogs on the street, roaming across the continent, in Indian continent. Despite this, despite there is a conflict, there is a rabies, larger number of people and animal die because of rabies is from India. The law says that only intervention allowed is spay, neuter, and return them back to the place from where they caught. So this stand itself a conflict for many people in India. It's not that everyone is supporting this solution. But then what is the alternative solution? Is killing will solve this? If it would have solved, we would have not come up with this solution because we killed for a long time and we tried. Someone can argue you did not try enough to kill. But is that what we want, kill? Is that how we define human civilization, that when we don't have options, we kill animals? Is that what the only option left with us? With all advancement in artificial intelligence, all advancement in space science, when it comes to animal, this is what we're left with, just kill because we don't want to work hard, we don't want to find solution. The moment we have an easy option, which is killing, that's it. By default, human will go with the easy solution. If it exists, then we'll pick it. And until it exists, we'll not think about anything else because the solution exists. Let's kill, keep killing. How many years we want to kill? 100 years, again more decades. Keep killing. Will that solve? Probably not. Because not that dog exists on the street is all the population. It's very dynamic. It's a fluid. So the new population or the population of dog which exists with people play a larger role in this. So such programs started in India, and we always talk about where is the evidence. But when those started replacing killing, they had also their learning curve. Those programs itself were learning how to implement, how to collect data. And some of the program in India started this work with collecting data and evidence. And despite these programs are going on parallelly, the problem exists, which are dog bite, rabies. But particularly in some of the city where they started this fundamental work about 25, 30 years ago, what happened is that when you sterilize a large number of population, and if you do collect data, and this slide is from about 16 cities where we're collecting data and about 46 breeding cycle. So collecting that, when I started working with dogs program, it was told to me that you sterilize 60%, 70%, and you solve the problem. But 60%, 70% might not be enough. You need to do more in terms of reaching or completely stopping lactating and pups. So if you want to control breeding, the effort has to be larger. And what we can learn from this program is that it is achievable, but has to be done in a different manner. They took it 30 years, how we can apply those learning, which does not take 30 years, and we can apply those learning to get the results, what they're getting, maybe in 5 or 6 years. So particularly Jaipur city started this work, and by now, they have 50% less dog. They are one of the most robustic in terms of data collection. So they do annual data collection on how intervention react on reality. So they are not just doing it, but they also do parallelly data collection. And the data, which are published and available, suggests that 50% less dog in Jaipur city, rabies becomes 0, so no human death reported in Jaipur in last many years. 50% less dog bite cases, because there are less dogs, there are less dog bite cases. Similar example from Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Chennai, and other places in India. But it took them a long time. And if we just look at that as an example or learning that it took them this period of time, how and what we can learn from them and apply in a way that we achieve those results in a faster way. So these are simulation model published in Nature journal, but that suggests that if, and this is a case scenario for India, where if you do nothing, no intervention, no spay-neuter, the population might remain within the range where it is right now, because that is how it is driven through birth. But if the birth or the reproduction is the only factor, it will remain stable. There is an assumption in this study that it will remain stable if your cities are not expanding, if people are not making it larger and larger, it will remain stable. And because it will remain stable, because once any mammal population reaches to a carrying capacity, it could go a little high, it could come down with the scarcity of food, with the disease outspread, and we all know about canine distemper, parvo, those play a larger role. And particularly street dog is about 20% pups survive to the age of 12 months. So if a female dog produces 5 or 6 pups, only one will survive up to age of 12 months. And the rest will die because of disease, accident, because of other conditions within the urban environment or even rural environment. Now this is the case, and when we were killing maybe 50% of them, we were killing maybe 80% of them, and we were killing when you reduce their population and the remaining population is completely fertile and have full capacity to breed, they have potential to 5 times, because until now, only 20% were surviving. With this, remaining population bounced back in no time, and it became again the same situation where it was started. So you kill, of course, you don't see many dogs for a few years, but in no time they will come back to that, because the remaining population has capacity to reach back to the carrying capacity. And in fact, at the 50% killing, it would come back very fast. That is why killing never worked. But when we say killing never worked, will spay-neuter also work? The same population science and the mammal science will apply to that also. If you sterilize very small amount, the same goes with them. If you sterilize in a small manner, in a random thing, it will not work as well. Then what should be the ideal rate of sterilization? How much need to be sterilized? How much need to be spay-neuter in order to get the benefit we want? So again, the same model which was saying that nothing will rapidly change. Again, this is for street dogs, where the breeding is the only contributing factor. When you sterilize at the scale which is larger than the reproduction, your intervention is larger than the reproduction speed. In that case, you'll see decline in dog population, and this is how it might work. But this is theory model. We can change those factors. We can sterilize faster. Ideally, if you sterilize more than 90% fertile female, because fertile female is the main contributor in mammal population, in a one breeding cycle, you basically interrupt breeding so drastically that it has the most benefit in terms of financial involvement as well as the results we want. The longer the intervention, the amount of money you spend in a small scale, ultimately you spend the larger amount of money. So if you spend less, but for 10 years, 20 or 30 years, combinedly you're spending larger than what you could spend in a 1 year where you get the maximum benefit of that. So to understand where this female-centric approach came, initially it was suggested in the guideline created by Animal Welfare Board of India, who is a regulatory body, advisory body in India. They suggested this approach in 2009, that more than 90% female should be sterilized on a priority as soon as possible. But the moment this as soon as possible is longer than 5 years or 6 years, you are in the cycle of never-ending process. The similar model published by various scientists, and in recent conference, Dr. Andrew York presented this on a conference called ICAM. So it is available if you want to deeply understand how to optimize your free-roaming dog population control program using the best resources. And when the resources are limited, which is always the case, that resources are limited, whether those are availability of veterinarians, whether those are availability of funds, or whether those are availability of infrastructure. So based on that information, in India, most program takes decades because every year about 20% new population come in that existing street dog population. And if 20% are coming new, and if your sterilization rate is lower than 20%, you can imagine how long it will take. It might take decades. So this is not computer model. This is just for example. And we can argue on this on various assumptions. But let's say city in India has 80,000 dogs. And city is sterilizing 15% of population every year. So that sterilization, and while we're sterilizing, parallelly, the remaining population is also growing. And this continues. By the time you finish 80,000, well, you have a new population. And this is the largest single argument by many municipal corporations that we are sterilizing from decades and decades. Nothing has changed. Of course, nothing will change. But if you sterilize differently, let's say 30% every year, it will still take time. But what if you sterilize 50% every year? And what if you sterilize 90% a year? That will change it. So in India, whether it started in early 90 or whether it started in early 2000 when the law came, most programs are doing this. And because they are doing this, now we're lacking the evidence, or we're asking for evidence, that where is the evidence that this program works? But this is the reason. This is the one reason. There are multiple reasons. Another challenge in India is that municipal authority or government has an administrative boundary out of which they cannot operate. But for dog, there is no boundary. The dog exists outside the administrative boundary. And because they exist, they also contribute to this population. So to think logically, the geographical approach has to be taken. Geographical approach means you cannot choose a small settlement or a location and you apply spay-neuter and expect to have some benefits of it. Because for you, it's a city boundary or a region. For dog, it might not be the case. They're migrating between that area. So as this presentation is about how to learn from other approach, organization called Better C come up with a zero stray project in Greece. What their philosophy or what their approach is, why prevention cannot be better than cure. So that out of the 12 component, and this is for Greece. So again, we can adopt some of this for Israel. We can learn some of this to take into Israel, not everything, because it's based on the context of grace. So they focus on before dog end up on the street or before dog come on the street. Their focus is largely on how to know the dog population, census of own dog, microchipping, registration, spay neuter, policing, maybe this is relevant for grace, analyzing, municipal administration, but education. But the focus is largely on preventing dog coming on the street. And of course, dogs on the street, how to have a treatment. So treatment involve sheltering, adoption, TNR, those are the component for prevention. But the main focus is given on preventing this coming on the street at the first place. Another example is that, and this is a part of thesis from the university, which I just copy-pasted to learn how we can learn from others. This compare that Norway, Germany, Italy, and US. Each of country has different approach, and based on their approach, they have outcome of that intervention. And these are the NGO working in Germany, Norway, Italy, and USA. The theme coming out of Norway and Germany, because they don't have a stray dog population, also they don't have a spay neuter as a mandatory. So what they did right, maybe that is applied to their context, but what we can learn from them, like what worked well. Their focus was puppy trade, puppy mill, breeder, how to stop dogs coming to in a population or to people, working on adoption, don't shop. Whereas Italy and USA mostly focus on sheltering, spay neuter, and when it comes to sheltering, it's come with the kill also. That in US, if you look at whole history, how they did in United States, starting 1970, by now, despite the dog population as a whole in the United States increased a lot, but the surrender to shelter decreased drastically. The last data available from ASPCA says that about 6.3 million dogs get surrendered to a shelter in US, dogs and cats, out of which 5 million is getting adopted. So they're finding a home for 5 million and 1 million getting killed. But that was not the case when they started. It was opposite, that they were killing a lot and only few were getting adopted. That was not the case when they started. There were more dogs getting surrendered to shelter or picked up from the street. What they did right is they focus on various aspects, which includes spay neuter. But spay neuter, again, as a standalone procedure will not work because the population come with the various aspect of humans, that how humans play or contribute into this. Further, to understand this, when we talk about that how spay neuter can reduce own dog population. Well, own dog population, first of all, is not just driven by birth. It's driven by a human need. If people want dog, they will have a dog. So the population might not change, but what will change is that the problem we associated with the dog, which are free-roaming dogs, dogs abandonment, dogs going to shelter, killing, this will get reduced. So there are various other models and studies based on how to reduce free-roaming dog exist. And from those, if we talk about this particular study, that if you sterilize large number of dog, spay neuter those, what it will remove is that accidental birth of dogs, accidental birth of dog with people, house, or on the street. If that is removed, your shelter adoption or shelter killing or sheltering dog reduced. Often, in our study, we also found that people get dogs as a gift. Maybe that is not relevant for Israel, but in many countries, that's the culture, mostly in Latin America, that people give or gift each other dog. And not that they want to gift. They gift because they have extra dogs, which they don't want accidentally. now they have 4 or 5 puppy which they can't keep in their house, so they start gifting. Basically, they want to get rid of that. The person who's receiving that dog might not be ready or willing to have that dog, but now he got or she got that dog as a gift and become accidental owner. This accidental owner are the problem. Not that they are bad people, but they are not dog person. And when you have a least amount of connection or bond with dog, there is less, more likely to that you will either abandon that dog or you will surrender that to the shelter. And when it goes to abandonment or shelter, ultimately it doesn't find a home, then killing is the option left. Similarly, one of the finest study published in Nature assessing the impact of free-roaming dog population managing through systematic modeling suggests that if you have various intervention to control dog population, how that impact on the street, how you see the connection between spay-neuter and free-roaming dog. While we're discussing that, there's another study which says that a stable sterilized population, even it is free-roaming, is less likely to get rabies. Because when the population is stable, sterilized and vaccinated, there are no new dog coming into that population, which will reduce the overall vaccination coverage, and by that, you can achieve rabies control better than the population which is breeding, multiplying, and increasing. So that model suggests that if your interventions are low, medium, high, it is annually. Some countries have an annual program once in a year. If it is a full simulation versus short period of simulation, it is continuous for 5 years and it is continuous for long term. CNR means the TNR for cat, catch, neuter, release, culling, responsible ownership, and CNR, sheltering, and CNR. Out of all this approach, the best result can be achieved through responsible pet ownership and CNR. And why is that case? Because if there is a better high-level, high-scale adoption, which will remove free-roaming dogs, as well as you sterilizing dog in a large scale, will of course produce better result. But this is against computer model. The reality or real scenario might be more complex than this simple model. So to understand how the population itself turn around, this was a study we conducted last year, that about 70% of dog population in low-income community in Aguascalientes, Mexico, was below 1 year. That means every year, about 70% of new dogs coming into that population. It's by breeder, it's by this gifting, or by somehow. If this is the new population coming every year, our intervention or our spay-neuter effort should be larger than this. If not, we might not reach the level of sterilization we want. When it comes to rural areas or villages, it is even higher, and this is for own dog population. If this is the case, and if sterilization is remain around 27% here and 10% here, well, that is not the scenario which will produce result. And this is the case classically, where we hear or see that the spay-neuter program is going on for years and years, hasn't produced result. Yes, because the intervention was not large enough, significant enough to break this cycle. Another example from South Africa, where similar case, even more population below 1 year. But when it's come to high income group, where people are more responsible, they have finance, resources, and the sterilization is larger, 71%. The population below 1 year is less, 8.6%. So the turnaround is lesser. dog live longer. So as dog live longer, there is less demand for having dog. Here, dog live lesser, shorter life, and as they live lesser and shorter life, the demand is larger. So most cases, we sterilize dog. This is, let's say, the Israel. We sterilize dog, but as a whole population, dogs die, new dogs come in, we continue our effort, we sterilize. While we are sterilizing, they also continue. And if this is the case, if this is how the whole population is reacting to your intervention of spay-neuter, if this is the case for cat, if you're sterilizing small scale, well, again, we are in the same position. Now, when it comes to this, all the arguments are around, like, where has it worked? Well, it hasn't worked well into the size of country of Israel, because how we saw, the most effort are random, scattered. No one has done it significantly, and no one has done so effort in a larger scale. Only example are we have from cities like Jaipur, Chennai, Mumbai in India, where they collected data, they have evidence that what can be changed through systematic sterilization. And since this is very limited, we are losing the fight. Because we are not gathering the evidence, and because we don't have robust program, it's always the case that, where is the evidence? Well, there was no evidence that you can land on the south pole of moon. United States failed, China failed, Russia failed, India failed. So evidence suggests that on a south pole of moon, you will always land crash. Based on that evidence, you should never try. Well, that's the evidence. But if that's the evidence, and we take it the evidence that it is impossible to land on south pole of moon, we will never land on the south pole of moon. But India did it a few months back. Not based on the evidence, but based on that they wanted to find a solution. So here also, should we wait for someone else to do it, prove it, and then we adopt it? Or we use existing population model, science, and various scenario, and maybe create that evidence, which other will learn from us. That's the choice. So again, we go back to dog. Confined dog could be owned, utility dog, farm dog, various type of dogs. We can go on and on and on. Free roaming, again, can be pet, allowed to roam. Some sort of feral, again, utility dog can be also roaming. Street dog, community dog might cover it. But based on those population, what are the solution? What existing solution we have is for the pet, we do sheltering, adoption. For feral, everyone is trying to find a solution. CNVR for street dogs. What solution we can come up with which solves this? As I was saying, that no one single solution will solve this. Because if it was so simple, if it was evident that you can solve this by simple one intervention, we could have solved it. Since the evidence lack, again, to see who is doing what globally, how they are doing it. So if we compare the study we conducted last year, Mexico, South Africa, and Costa Rica, each country has different approach. Costa Rica has policy, or they're taking a stand that we are will not kill, no matter what. They have richest biodiversity. They have everything you think of, birds, small mammals, turtle, whatever you think of, they have all of that. But still, they are on the stand that we are no kill. Will not kill. Despite they are not killing, how come they have the least amount of dog on the street? It has to be more because they are not killing. Mexico is killing in this city, Aguascalientes. Here in Redasdorf, which is part of Quipagales municipal, they are also killing. That has to be that the killing should win. Why they are winning here? Because they are actually not killing. Because the sterilization of own dog was 81% in Monte de Oca municipality, which is a part of San Jose, the capital region. Another very important and evident component they taking was kind of fascinating to me was that their focus is long-term also. While they are doing spay-neuter, while they are doing all of this, their focus is also long-term. That when they have a shelter, they have half of the shelter for education purpose. They educate school children, they educate community members, they educate everyone around who's keeping dog. And people have a mentality created that dog means has to be sterilized. Dog means has to be vaccinated. Dog means it has to stay with us inside the house. That is how the dog should be. So if you create that mentality through various education effort or through various program, that is a long-term intervention, and it will produce result. And this is 2022. In next 5 years, when we collect another round of data, maybe 0 here, then who is winning in the long term? So what we can learn from them? That intervention has to be at significant level, where people also understand what dog means to them. In very core, if there is a strong enough bond between dog and human, they're less likely to be go on the street, abandonment, surrender. So how we strengthen or create this bond with human and dog, which solves this problem for the long term. Unless we solve this at that scale or that, I think we're going to continue this for next few more decades. And I'll keep coming and we keep discussing this. When it comes to cat, because I think cat is also a point of discussion in Israel. And this is a guideline, again, it's available on ICAM Coalition website, which explain everything in deep. But they come up with some definition which are published and summarizing everything available around cat and suggest that cat is even, seems like complex problem than dog. And when it is complexer than dog, and if it has an impact on wildlife and mammals which lives around, if we learn from other slides that intervention has to be that scale. Intervention has to involve various other parameters. Intervention has to also cover all the aspect, how dogs or cats on the street living, why they exist. Until we do that, I think we will not solve it. If we just pick up one tool out of the whole toolkit and then we want to fix it, it might not be good enough. But then what is the future? Is there a future approach which is better than what we do right now? Spay, neuter, sterilization, surgery, long procedure. Some exist, and alliance called Alliance for Contraception in Dogs and Cats. They're working for such solution which are non-surgical, which does not require a veterinarian to anesthetize dog or cat, remove reproductive organ and the long procedure. But how it can be done, and I was talking with some of your colleagues here who also have similar solutions which are possibly fit to cats or dog, and it also play a role. So how we can replace surgery, this solution to something which is new? The single injection given intramuscular, if this is possible, that a single intramuscular injection given to a cat or dog, which permanently sterilize them, permanently make them non-reproductive, that could be applied to larger scale. And this is what came up a few months ago with that alliance and a company they are working with, that they did a trial with few cats, and this is called gene therapy. So in gene therapy, there is a virus which carry a particular gene, which goes into a body, multiply, and start producing anti-Muller hormone, which interfere with the reproduction in cat. And that makes it permanently sterile. If this is the solution, now the largest trial are underway, and in few years, if everything goes right, maybe we will have that injection, which single shot intramuscular injection, makes cats and hopefully for a dog. Whatever I discussed or talking, every paper or resources are available on HSI website. We have a department which I work, monitoring evaluation, as well as ICAM, the coalition, where several organizations, international organizations, sharing their knowledge and experience also available on that. So if you want to do more, explore what solution exists, these are the resources. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. Thank you so much.